Please, somebody help my mama. The little girl's voice cracked as she stumbled into the middle of the road, tears streaking her face, her tiny hands shaking. Cars kept passing. Nobody stopped. Across the street, a group of leather-clad bikers turned their heads, their engines rumbling like thunder. People whispered, "Don't get involved." They're trouble. But trouble was already happening. Inside that small grocery store, a woman's screams echoed, muffled, desperate. The store owner, a man everyone called Mr. Frank, had dragged her behind the counter, shouting racial slurs loud enough for the whole block to hear. No one dared step in. No one, except her little girl. What those bikers did next would silence an entire town. In just 7 minutes, everything would change. Would you have stopped or just kept driving? Tell us in the comments. Before we begin, hit subscribe. It's appreciated. It was a quiet afternoon in the small town of Greenridge, a place where everyone claimed to mind their own business. Angela, a single mother in her early 30s, had just finished her shift at the diner and stopped by the corner store to grab some groceries before picking up her daughter, Maya, from school. She worked hard, always smiling at customers even when they didn't smile back. People saw her kindness, but not the exhaustion behind her eyes. Maya was 6, curious, bright, and talkative. She loved riding her little pink bike alongside her mom's old car, waving at the neighbors who rarely waved back. To them, Angela and Maya were outsiders. They had moved to Greenridge 2 years ago, hoping for a safer neighborhood. But the looks, the whispers, and the subtle reminders that they didn't belong never stopped. Inside that store, Angela tried to ignore the stares as she picked up milk and bread. Mr. Frank, the store owner, leaned on the counter, pretending to tidy up, but his eyes followed her every move. She had felt that gaze before, the one that weighed her down as if she needed permission to exist in his space. Still, she kept her head high. She had dealt with worse. As she approached the counter, he smirked. "You people always come at the end of the month," he muttered, loud enough for others to hear. A few customers looked away. Angela felt the sting in her chest but refused to react. "Just these," she said softly, placing her items down, but when she pulled out her card, he slapped her hand away. The groceries fell to the floor. The sound echoed through the small store. Angela froze, humiliated, stunned. Maya wasn't there yet. She was still pedaling home from school. No one moved. Not a word was spoken. Angela bent down to pick up the milk, her hands trembling, but before she could stand up again, she felt his hand on her shoulder. Rough, controlling. Something in his tone shifted from rude to dangerous. The world seemed to shrink around her. Out on the street, the roar of motorcycle engines grew louder. Maya was coming, and what she was about to see would change her forever. If you were in Angela's place, would you have stayed silent or spoken up? Tell us what you'd do in the comments. Angela's knees hit the cold tile floor as Mr. Frank's voice grew harsher, his anger twisting into something uglier than simple hate. "You think you can walk in here like you own the place?" He spat, his words dripping with disgust. The few customers nearby froze, pretending to browse the aisles, eyes darting but feet unmoving. Angela tried to rise, but his grip tightened. She begged him to let her go. He didn't. Instead, he shoved her back down, her groceries spilling, milk spreading across the floor like a white trail of shame. Somewhere outside, the sound of a small bike screeched to a stop. Maya pressed her face against the glass door, her eyes widening as she saw her mother on the floor, a man towering over her. She pushed the door open and screamed, her voice slicing through the silence. "Stop! That's my mama!" Everyone turned. No one acted. Mr. Frank's face darkened. "Get that kid out of here!" He barked, but Maya didn't move. She ran outside, tears flooding her cheeks, and spotted the group of bikers parked across the street. They were big, tattooed, wearing black vests and helmets, the kind of people parents usually warn their kids to avoid, but desperation doesn't choose who to trust. She ran straight to them, gasping for air. "Please, they're beating my mama!" she cried, her tiny voice cracking under panic. The leader, A broad-shouldered man named Rick switched off his engine and stared. For a second, the world went still. Then, without a word, he kicked his stand down and motioned to his crew. Back in the store, Angela tried to crawl away, her palms slipping on the wet floor. Mr. Frank grabbed her wrist again, shouting things that didn't even sound like words anymore. Just hate turned into noise. Then the bell above the door chimed. 6 bikers stepped inside. The air changed instantly. Their boots hit the floor with slow, deliberate thuds. Customers scattered. Rick's eyes locked on the scene. Angela shaking, Mr. Frank looming. No one spoke for a full 3 seconds. Then Rick stepped forward. His voice was low, steady. "Is this how you treat women here?" Mr. Frank straightened, puffing up his chest. "This is my store," he snapped. He never finished the sentence. Rick moved closer, not aggressive, but heavy with authority. "Then you better start cleaning up your mess," he said, his tone sharp enough to cut through glass. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, drawn by the sound of rumbling engines and crying. Maya clung to one of the biker's arms, her eyes wide but hopeful. Inside, Mr. Frank's confidence began to fade. The bikers didn't touch him, didn't shout. They just stared, a silent wall of judgment that felt heavier than any threat. Angela stood slowly, bruised but unbroken. Rick turned to her and nodded once. "You okay?" She tried to answer, but her throat closed. Tears streamed silently. When the police finally arrived, they didn't know what to make of it. A terrified woman, a furious store owner, and 6 bikers standing guard like soldiers. But the truth was already clear. By the time the flashing lights faded, the story had already begun spreading through the town. The people who had once ignored the little family now whispered a new question. What kind of man lays hands on a woman while her child watches? And while Mr. Frank was taken away for questioning, the image of that small girl clutching her mother's hand, surrounded by strangers who refused to stay silent, burned itself into everyone's memory. Still, something darker lingered beneath the surface. Because even after the bikers left, Angela knew the town's eyes would still follow her. And this wasn't over. Not yet. What do you think will happen when the truth about that day finally comes out? Tell us below. Your prediction might surprise you. The next morning, the town of Greenridge buzzed like a nest of wasps. Rumors flew faster than the truth could catch them. Some said the bikers had wrecked the store. Others claimed Angela had made it up for attention. But those who were there knew what they saw. A man's hate laid bare, and a mother's terror turned into courage. Angela sat at her kitchen table, bruised and quiet, staring at the police report. The officer who took her statement hadn't looked her in the eye. "We'll see what the camera footage shows," he'd said, like her word alone didn't matter. She'd seen that look before. Polite disbelief. It hurt more than the bruise on her arm. Then came the knock. 3 hard raps on the door. Angela froze. Maya clutched her sleeve. Through the curtain, she saw black leather jackets. The bikers. Rick stood at the front, holding something small in his hand. Angela opened the door slowly, unsure. Rick spoke softly. "The cameras in that store?" "They're gone. Someone wiped them." He paused. "But one of my guys got dash cam footage from the bikes outside. It caught everything." Angela's heart jumped. Proof. Finally. But before she could thank him, a black car pulled up across the street. 2 men in suits stepped out, one of them wearing a sheriff's badge. They started walking toward her house. Rick's jaw tightened. "Looks like they came to make this go away," he muttered. The sheriff and his deputy demanded Angela's dashcam footage to bury the truth, but she stood firm, backed by Rick and the bikers. When Rick played the raw audio of the incident, Mr. Frank's rage, Angela's pleas, Maya's cries, the sheriff backed off, pale and muttering. Angela, trembling but resolute, felt seen for the first time. Weeks later, the footage spread online, exposing Greenridge's underbelly. The story went viral, Mr. Frank's store closed, and the sheriff was suspended. Angela and Maya became symbols of courage, and neighbors who once ignored them now offered support. The roar of motorcycles, once frightening, now meant safety to Angela, but she knew the fight wasn't over. Silence still shielded oppressors in too many places. When Maya asked why people do bad things, Angela said, because not enough stand up. One act of bravery had shaken the town awake, but how many more would it take? What do you think? Will people finally listen, or will silence win again? Share below.